So may I introduce the staff, the SOA staff member. The first person is Mr. Jeremy Weber. He's on at the podium right now. And another person is Mr. Jerry Brown. And the next person is our alumni, Mr. Barnett. He's right now employee in Thai Life Insurance Public Company. So today, the SOA team will come to give the talk to our university students to engage with the SOA and learn about the actual profession as a career choice. So please welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We're excited to be here. Good morning. Today we're going to explain what the SOA is. We're going to have a moderated discussion with my colleagues. I'm going to talk about the education system and pathway of it, and we'll also have time for your questions for myself or for our panel. My name is Jeremy Weber. I work at the Society of Actuaries, and I work on our professionalism programs, which is our associateship professionalism course, as well as our fellowship admissions course. And I also work very closely with our predictive analytics exam. I'd like to introduce my first colleague today. His name is Jerry Brown. He is a past president of the Society of Actuaries. And I'll give Jerry a moment to introduce himself, discuss his background, education, employment history, volunteer history, anything else you feel you'd like to share with us.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. I've actually been to Thailand several times. One of my children spent some time backpacking through Thailand, so we visited a few times. And when I was president, I did come and met with the Society of Actuaries of Thailand, with the president. And I also have done, as Jeremy mentioned, our fellowship admissions course and associate professionalism courses. I've run those courses here in Bangkok. I've been a long-term time volunteer. I became an FSA before any of you were born. I finished my exams in 1980 and have been a pretty active volunteer with the SOA throughout that time. I worked for 2 different life insurance companies and for a consulting firm. I worked for what was called State Mutual in Massachusetts for 18 years. I started as a brand new student, much like you will be doing when you graduate from college, and I worked my way up to become chief actuary of that company. I then worked for Milliman in Boston for 3 years, doing a wide variety of consulting projects. Consulting is a really interesting facet of work in that you're just doing new things all the time. And then I finished my career with another 18 years as chief actuary of Mutual of America Life Insurance Company in New York City, where I was chief actuary. And I retired 5 years ago. My wife would say I'm really terrible at retirement. I spent 3 years of my retirement as SOA president-elect, SOA president, and then SOA past president. It's very much a full-time job. Got some wonderful things about meeting with actuarial students and meeting with our members around the world. So that part was a lot of fun. I'm currently doing a little consulting for a firm now, just to kind of keep myself busy and keep my mind going. But I've been very involved with the SOA. I used to write exam questions, and then I graded exams, and I've been very involved with the fellowship admissions course. I've run it many times, more times than I care to say. And been fortunate and allowed me to travel around the world to do that. So that's just a little nutshell about what I have. I'm more than happy to share more as we get to question and answers. Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce Parmet, who, as noted, is an alumni of this university. So if you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Jeremy. My name is Parmet Amonsuthon. I graduated from Mahidol University in Actuarial Science program. And I'm currently employed at Thai Life Insurance Company, working on the IOS Student Team project, Watershed Team, and Enterprise Data Warehouse project. Thank you.
So what exactly is the Society of Actuaries? The Society of Actuaries is the largest professional actuary organization in the world. We now serve 31,000 members, and we have over 43,000 candidates. There are over 4,500 people who volunteer for the SOA on our various education programs, research. And we have a threefold commitment to education, research, and advancing the profession as well. Where are our members located? As you see the majority are in the United States, and we also have a large amount in Canada. But if you look at the yellow area on this pie chart, it's the Asia Pacific area. So you can see, as it currently stands, as the third largest group of members that we have. And then if you look at where our candidates are located, you will see that's actually now, it's now the second largest area. So that includes Thailand. We have, and then beyond that, we have Canada and candidates throughout China, and then a small amount around the rest of the world as well. If you look where our exams are administered, they are administered all over the world. Or you can see the largest centers from 2018 on this list, including Toronto, Korea, China, Malaysia, Taiwan. So we do administer exams absolutely all over the world. So the question now is, what is an actuary? And does anyone want to comment on what they think that is? Well, then let me open that up to our panel. Can you answer the question, what exactly is an actuary?
You know, actuaries really do a wide variety of work, but I think most of it involves insurance systems and employee benefit plans. That's where most actuaries are involved. Those insurance systems are either working in consulting firms or they're working at companies themselves. They're designing insurance products, they're pricing insurance products, deciding how much should a consumer pay to purchase a life insurance product, how much should an employer pay to purchase a health insurance plan for all of his employees. You know, it sounds kind of simple, or maybe it sounds a little boring, but it's very exciting work. I worked for 40 years in insurance, and you know, I retired actually, like that. I've been working, but it's a very interesting work. You've got to deal with a regulatory environment. You've got to deal with other people in your company, whether they're lawyers, accountants, financial people. You really have to know a lot about a lot of aspects of business to be a successful actuary. And I think the real successful actuaries have good communication skills as well as very solid technical skills. So you start your job, you'll do, you know, when you're young and just into the business, you do a lot of work with Excel spreadsheets, with calculating things, with doing kind of work that someone tells you what to do. And then as you work your way and get a little more experience and a little more knowledge from working, you're deciding what to do. You're deciding what other people should do. You know, you work long enough at a company, you become part of the senior management team and decide what products should our company sell? How should we invest the money to make the most money for the company while being, you know, making sure our company is safe for the people that purchase our products? Insurance companies make big promises with guarantees, and people that buy those products want to make sure that the company will be there to pay the claim at the end of the day when that day comes. So actuaries are involved in all sorts of things to keep companies financially solvent. And you just have to know a lot of different things, and our exams kind of take you through that process from the entry-level exams where you're learning a lot of mathematics, the predictive analytics where you're really deciding how to apply that mathematics, to learning, you know, the fundamentals of insurance and how you price products and how you put all that to work. So I just can't tell you how exciting the work is and how fun the work is, and you can actually be fairly well paid doing it too, and that doesn't, you know, that's not a bad thing either.
And then, Parman, I do have a question for you. Could you discuss what your typical workday looks like?
For me, I usually work with the data as, you know, gathered from many sources like marketing source, operating source, and the claim department, and working, analyzing the result from something like the experience study to see what, how mortality assumption is and how to calculate this and that, and communicate the result to another department to say that how much loss we get from the loss ratio or something like that. And it could vary in some situations, like at the time government announced the lower interest rate by 25 basis points, and we have another work to do that, how that announcement impact our financial position, something like that.
To become an actuary with the SOA, candidate you must complete various requirements. The first SOA designation is ASA, or Associate of the Society of Actuaries. What you'll see on this slide is the ASA pathway. The SOA-ASA curriculum reflects employee value components and the quality, rigor, and depth and expertise expected of SOA members. ASA is mastered fundamental concepts. An ASA is a member of the Society of Actuaries, but not with full privileges. If you look at this pathway, it is recommended that candidates take these requirements in the stages they are listed. You'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the initial column, what we have is VEE. That is in green on the initial column and on the second column. VEE is a component that may be accomplished by university coursework. VEE requirements can also be accomplished outside of university study. You will see in blue here, we have all of the various exams in the ASA pathway. It is recommended that exam P and FM, which is probability and financial mathematics, are taken first. This is also done because many universities offer courses that focus on these exams as well. We also have an e-learning component that is in yellow on the ASA pathway. This is something that is completed online via modules, and that is something that a candidate can complete on their own time. You register for these and you have a period of time to work through them on your own. We have also recently added, you will see in orange, the advanced column, the predictive analytics exam. This is predictive analytics and AI learning is becoming very important to the Society of Actuaries, and we added this exam last year as part of the ASA pathway. And then finally, something that Jerry and I are very familiar with is the Associateship Professionalism course. It is a one-day course where we study the ethics and the issues that come with becoming an ASA with the Society of Actuaries. Now, certainly the exams are the biggest part of the ASA pathway and something you may be very interested in. So I'm going to ask the questions of our panel discussing their time taking the exams. And either one of you, let me ask you, what were some of the best practices you had when studying for the exams?
Let me go first. I usually plan my study ahead because each exam has a huge syllabus there. So by planning and setting a schedule for each day and try to achieve that to cover all the topics and have some time to relax. As you know, the exam is quite tough if you study all day.
Yeah, I had a very similar strategy, although I don't think I had any time to relax. I found that by doing practice problems for the early exams, P and FM, the mathematical ones, I found old SOA exams, I found, purchased books that had, 100 questions in them, and I do them over and over again. And eventually, by doing them, you got so that you understood every sort of mathematical problem you could find in that area. And, once you've done the test 2 or 3 times, you tend to get the answers right because you've done it before. And it really builds your confidence that you're good at it. So I found that was a helpful trick to me. I didn't study with a lot of other people. I generally studied by myself. I'm sort of competitive by nature, whether it's on a tennis court or at school or anywhere else. And I didn't want to take an exam and have one of my coworkers pass it and have me not pass it. So I put an awful lot of time into my exams early on, and it paid off very well for me in terms of I progressed through my exams very quickly. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is to just do the practice exams. You've got to get to be accurate, and you've got to be able to do them quickly in order so you can get through all the time, all the questions, and then be able to check your work.
Jerry, you mentioned the practice exams. Are there any other resources that either of you used when studying for the exams?
After the mathematical exams, there were I'll call written answer. You have to read like 2,000 pages of material and ask questions of why do companies put in benefit plans and how do companies price universal life insurance products and things like that. And there are kind of what I'll call commercial study guides. There are universities that are in this business. A lot of them have books. There's a company called Actex that publishes a number of study guides. And a lot of those have material that kind of summarizes what's in the material and helps you walk through it and keep yourself organized. I found if it was something that involved a lot of reading, my mental type is something I have to read it a couple times to really get it. So I went through, I read through all the required books, kind of read the study guides. Any study guides I would have taken would have been so ancient now, and they're probably no longer applicable. There are new firms in that business, but I guess my advice would be find people that are just 1 or 2 exams ahead of you and talk to them. How are you successful? What did you do? What study guides could you find? What sample problems could you get? Where did you get those sample problems? And you'll find people are very interested in helping you succeed at it. So I would encourage you to talk to people that are 1, 2, 3 years older, or maybe they're even younger, but they just started earlier, so they're ahead of you. But find people that are successful and see if what they do works for you. Everybody has their own kind of style of what will make them successful studying, and you have to find what works for you.
For me, I decided to study at the Python. I also used something like online seminar. They will teach you how to do that, how to do the thing. And the other, the late exam, like after all the calculation thing, there will be a lot of the explanation thing. And you have to know all the results and how they do that, and something like the assumption they use in the pricing. And we explain each assumption detail, and all the things that really help me that they can tell me how things come in the actual world.
I did pass all my exams on my first try, except for the first one, actually the first 2. The first one I had taken was, at that time, was on calculus. It was, I took all my calculus courses when I was a freshman. I didn't really find out about the exam until several years later. I'd kind of forgotten all the little shortcuts, and I didn't do very well. And I had an opportunity to tutor a blind student in calculus. And by tutoring the blind person, I was able, I really learned calculus all over again in a whole much better way. And so you might not have a chance to tutor somebody that's blind, but if you can teach somebody else, whatever the course is, you'll learn it a lot better teaching it than you will by being taught. So look for opportunities to help other people along, and you might find you're helping yourself as well.
Part of that question for you, since Jerry's not taking exams since the 1970s, but could you talk about what your first exam was like, what surprised you, what you would have liked to have known ahead of time, things of that nature?
Okay. My first exam was probably the exam. It was a computer-based test, and it was a probably exam that I walked in, and in the exam room there was only me and the computer in front of me. And I had to spend there around 3 hours, and it was so nervous. And in the first 5 minutes, I couldn't answer any question, and it's so bad. And until I got back to my focus and worked normally. And the most exciting part is when I submitted my answer. My heart was beating so fast, and if you have taken one, you feel that.
And Mr. Brown, you've already mentioned you did not pass every single exam on the first try, so I wondered if you could discuss that, what you learned from it, what you did the next time you were taking a similar, the same exam.
Yeah, I think even though this advice is from 1972, or 76, I guess, it might still be advantage today. I was a math major. I thought I knew calculus. I thought I knew all this stuff. I thought I knew probability. So I kind of sat down for the exams and thought, I'll just, I got pretty good marks in school. I should be able to do these. But I just wasn't prepared for them. And I learned more from failing those 2 exams. First, I learned how much, I don't know if I can say this, but how much it sucked to not pass. I was not very happy to get a mark less than a passing mark. So I just made a vow never to do that again. And I just worked probably 10 times harder than I had to pass. But by failure taught me to, just do it a little bit isn't enough. Better to do a little bit more than is required and pass than to do not quite enough and then have to do it over and over again. I studied with people that took an exam 3 times, that took an exam 4 times. They spent way more time in total than I did by studying it once, but I put more time in it that one time than they did any of their 4 times. So I just encourage encourage you to put it, even if you've taken the course here at school, do those practice exams. Look at what the SOA says you need to know in order to pass it. Make sure you know that, because if you don't, you're probably not going to have good results. But if you are prepared and do know the material, you will pass. And I just always went into the exams knowing I would pass that exam. Don't go in there like maybe I will, maybe I won't, I hope I do. Go in there with confidence. Know you're gonna do well, but you can only go in there with that confidence if you have got yourself really well prepared.
I'm going to ask the same thing of you.
Yeah, just similar to Jerry, that I don't usually pass in the first time, and I have to focus on what part I did worse and how can I improve that. So I spend more time in that area, most of it. So my schedule plan has been adapted to improve myself in that area, most of it, and my colleague that has part always can help me too, that they can know how the exam was like and how can I improve that by taking my solution to that, to see that, to let them check and tell me how can I improve that, what I did wrong, and what I did wrong, something like that.
And before we move on, do you have anything else you'd like to share regarding exams, taking exams?
I might just add one more thing. You kind of have to know about how many hours it takes to pass an exam, and that number is different for everybody. If you're brilliant, that number might be very, very low, and if you're more average, that number is medium, and if you're below average, the number is even bigger. Well, I always set like a target of how much time I needed, and our company gave study time. I don't know if this company's here do or not.
Yeah, I have some study leave, like 10 days for one exam. Yeah.
Okay, so our program wasn't in days, it was in hours. I got, for some of the exams, as much as 140 hours of study time. And so I would go right to the company library at 7 o'clock in the morning or 7:30 in the morning when our workday started. And I wouldn't even come to my desk until 9:30, because I knew if I started working or I started doing anything, studying would always come last. I made it a priority for myself, and I did that first. Before even going to my desk to see if I had any telephone calls, to see if I had meetings that day, I just went and got my work done. The same thing on a Saturday or Sunday. If I thought I was going to spend 2 or 3 hours, I'd get up, have breakfast, have coffee, and I'd do my study, because I knew if I started playing with my kids and I started doing other things and I started doing all the chores of life, you get to the end of the day and then, well, I didn't have time today, I'll just do twice as much tomorrow. And then you find that forever procrastinating is not a very successful strategy. So I found by just committing myself like a budget of time and staying to it and starting it before anything else can interfere with it, I always got my study time in.
I would like to add some techniques that you have to use in the exam. Like, you start with your calculator. It is the only tool that you have in the exam room. You have to use it all the time in your calculation. And the other thing is the time management in the exam room. Because although you see that there's plenty of time in the exam, but you find that it moves so fast and you notice again when there's 5 minutes left.
So as Jerry noted, I do want to emphasize this, there are sample exams on the SOA website. We do encourage you to find those. They can be extremely helpful when studying for an exam. Now we're going to move on and discuss interviews and obtaining a job. And so let me start by asking the panel, what would you say employers are looking for in an actuarial professional?
In 40 years of working, I interviewed a lot of students over the course of time. And I generally knew most of the students that came in to see me. I got something on your resume. Most of the people that came into my office for an interview could do the work. The people that I was more likely to hire were the ones that I thought took an interest, that showed some enthusiasm, that showed some interest. If you're going to go interview at a company, look them up, go to Google, go on the internet, find out what does that company do. Do they sell car insurance? Do they sell life insurance? Do they sell large policies? Do they sell small policies? Are they growing? Are they shrinking? You can read a company's annual report and learn a little bit about what their business is. If you understand a little bit about the company, you can ask intelligent questions when you go to an interview. Also, be ready for like what I'll call softball questions. You know, if the interviewer says, "So, what are you good at?" And if you don't have an answer, you're probably not going to get hired. If it takes you a long time to figure out if you're good at anything, you're going to lose the person's interest. I wanted to hire people that I thought would be fun to work with, that I thought would add and work well with the other people I worked with. So, you know, I didn't want a goody two-shoes that read all our annual reports and asked 25 questions about the thing, trying to show how much he knew when he didn't really know anything. But I did like somebody that had a little enthusiasm for our company, that looked like they'd be fun to work with, and very importantly, that they had good communication skills. Like I said, I think everybody coming out of college can write a simple spreadsheet and do basic entry-level actuarial work. But not all those people can then explain their work. The hardest part of my job, the whole 40 years I was working, was not coming up with the right answer. The hardest part was convincing my company that my answer was right. This is what we need to do to grow the company. This is what we need to do to make more money, to be successful. So communication skills are really, really important. If you're uncomfortable speaking in front of an audience, find opportunities to do that. If you've never been on a job interview, practice an interview with a friend. Have a friend interview you, and have them ask you, like, so, you know, what were you good at in college? What do you like to do outside of work? Why would you like to work for the Time Life Insurance Company? Be ready for those questions, and if the person says then, well, okay, I appreciate you telling me all about you. Do you have any questions for me? If you sit there, no, you know, that's not showing interest. If you know, ask the person, what do you like about your job? What is your company good at? What are you known at? What are the challenges in your company? What are the things you'd like to see your company do? What are the hardest things about working in the actuarial department at this company? It doesn't matter what you ask, but be prepared for those types of questions. You'll find like the best way to be good at an interview is to really be bad at an interview. So your first interview, you know, you might not be really well prepared, but learn from that. The next time you go out and realize, oh, I was totally stumped when the guy said, well, what do you like to do outside of work? Or why do you want to be an actuary? Why do you want to work in my company? Think about that and have the answers for some of those questions. And even if the person doesn't ask you the exact question that you're prepared to answer, give them the answer to the question you wish he asked. You can kind of twist it around to take a little control of the interview, but show that you've got enthusiasm for the job, that you'd be a fun person to work with, that you'd be a valuable addition to the team. So I think those are things to think about, and those are things at least I looked at when I was interviewing actuarial students.
So I would like to share something. I did something like Jerry said that for the first time that I take into, it was so bad because I didn't prepare anything and I couldn't answer anything. That there was some dead air in the room, and then I didn't get the job for the first time. But the second interview that I had, and I got this job from him because I prepared and I did some research about the company, that what product did it sell, like Jerry said, and what did it sell, how, and something like technical thing you might know that how research is calculated, because it's my part, it's my job description that is said when I apply. And research is calculated, and they will ask that how is it calculated, what option is used to calculate the research, that's something like technical part. And be able to do something like the software, because the computer skill is the most important nowadays. You know, everyone has a smartphone in their hand, and computer is a big part of actual job. So computer skill is something like that company wants you to be professional, to be good at. And yeah.
Jerry, as someone who has done interviews and done hiring, you've touched on this a little bit, but could you speak a little more on what sort of traits or skills you were looking for, what you would recommend potential employee focus on?
You know, and I did mention some of the things. I look for people that look like they'd be fun to work with, that look like they'd be interesting, that would add. But I tell you another thing, you know, reach reach out to people that you know. If you know any actuarial students, see if you can get them to get an interview with the company they work for. And if you reach out to an employer and they say, look, I don't have any jobs for you. You say, look, I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for, I'd love your thoughts on the industry. I'd love to learn a little bit more about actuarial science. I'd love to learn about what it's like to work at your company. And if you show that interest, I think, Aaron, sometimes people on a busy day, they just won't have any time for you and they'll reject you out at the end. But if you show interest, someone will let you in. And I'll be honest with you, I got resumes just about every day. The first 2 or 3 I saved, and I eventually said, I don't need to save these resumes. I'll get more tomorrow. So I didn't really remember any of the resumes I got, but I always remembered the people that I interviewed with. So if I interviewed somebody that was really, really good, I might not have had a job for them that day, but if in 2 months somebody left, I said, geez, I interviewed somebody about a month ago and it was pretty good. I'm gonna see if they're still available. Again, I don't remember the 100 resumes I got, but I remember the 3 or 4 people that pushed hard enough to get in and get an interview with me. And I'll be honest with you, if I found someone I really, really liked, but I still didn't have a place for, but I thought they were good, I have friends at 5 or 6 other places. Maybe they're looking for an employee, maybe they're not. So I'd send their resume off to 3 or 4 friends and say, here's somebody you interviewed. I think they have a lot of potential. I just don't have a place for them now. So what your real goal isn't to get a job. Your goal is to get an interview. Try and get in to see me in my office. If I say, no, I don't have any openings, tell me not looking for a job. You just want to get in and see. So again, I can't stress enough about being prepared for an interview. Think about the types of things you might be asked. Think about what is it you really want to tell about yourself. If you've done something really great, if you've gotten an award at your university, if you've gotten something in outside interest that you're really, really good at, make sure the person knows about that. I'll just give you one example. The SOA does something called the Candidate Connect event, and they're events where SOA staff, local actuaries come out, and they do this sort of thing. And I was chatting with a guy, what did I think? Oh, I like hiking. Oh, I like hiking too. So we found kind of common and we chatted for a while. He said, can I give you my resume? So I got his resume, I read it when I got home. And so I like hiking. For me, hiking means going out and taking a 2-mile walk. This guy on his outside interests said, mountaineering, Denali, Everest. So the guys climbed Mount Everest, all right? Now, not everyone has done that, but if you've done something like that, make sure you tell somebody. This guy didn't even tell me, he just said he likes hiking. If he told me, I like hiking so much I climb Mount Everest, I would have had that guy in my office the next Monday to say, not necessarily to hire him, I want to learn more about how he got there. And actually, I did have a conversation with him. It's a very interesting story that I don't have time to talk about right now. Again, if you've got something you're really good at, if you play softball, if you're captain of your soccer team, if you play volleyball, if you are on the debate team, if you do something that's good, employers will understand if you're good at that, you might be good at something else. If you show enthusiasm on the soccer pitch, you might show enthusiasm in my company as well. So find ways to showcase what you're good at. If you've got something, don't keep it a secret. Make sure your prospective employers know that.
And Parma, you mentioned something I'd like to ask you more about. You said your first interview did not go well, and the second interview did go well. Could you talk about specifically what you learned after that first interview and the changes that you made?
Yeah. Because for the second interview, I mentioned I did some research on the company that I applied for, and they asked me that how do you calculate the research? What is the assumption used to calculate the research? But not every company will ask the technical question. Some of them ask, but you have to know some, because it's your job, it's your actual job, and you work around with the calculation and formula and something like that. And for the second part, they asked me about is something like computer skill that because the junior actually always work with the data, so the computer skill that you have to use It's something like a spreadsheet, it's a spreadsheet and a database program, and I was capable of doing that, so I get hired to this company. So I be prepared. And I know my strength, my weakness, and I can answer correctly because I know what they will ask this, and they always ask about your weakness and strength. Yeah.
Jerry, you talked a little bit about resumes. I thought, could you give some tips on creating a good resume?
Yeah, you want to, there's a lot of little rules about a resume. I'll tell you just a couple of important ones. Run it through spell check. I can't tell you how often I look at resumes and I find things that aren't written well. It's just spelled incorrectly. And you'll appreciate this perhaps more from foreign students. I get a lot of them that, frankly, the English is not very good. If your written English isn't as good as it should be, show your resume to somebody that can help you with it. And like, you might have I know what you mean by it, but when I see it poorly written, I wonder what your English skills are, which are important to me. My business is all conducted in English, so think about that. Make sure you have, you kind of want to begin with contact information. Your email address ought to be something like your name at, something.edu or something. But if you have kind of a wild and crazy, if your email address is hotlips at, hotmail.com, that's not businesslike. Make sure that there's nothing on your resume that's not businesslike. People are looking for reasons to throw your resume away. All right, I get 50 of them every week. I just need to find one or two things wrong with it that I can go to the next one. If you had a job in high school, be honest about it. I read these interviews from, I worked part-time at a grocery store and I managed a $14 million budget and was able to cut costs by 15%. High school kids don't do that. It's fine to have a strong resume, but make sure it's realistic, that someone could look at it and say, okay, the person might have actually done that. Like I said with my mountaineering example, if you're really good at something, have something in the bottom outside interests. Even if you're not really good at something, list the things you like to do. You never know what the person who's reading your resume, if you like cricket or you like rugby and the person's like a rugby nut, they might bring you in just because they want to talk rugby with you for a while. And once they find out they like you, they'll find out what you do for work. Make sure you just don't have reading, extracurricular activities. Have some interesting things, and they have to be true. But most of us have other things besides work that we do, and other things besides school. Write some things there that are interesting in your outside interests. If you got a 10 on P and a 10 on FM, I'd put those scores on there. If your GPA is the highest in the class, put that on there. If you have really mediocre scores or really mediocre GPAs, I'd leave that stuff out. If the guy will ask you, you can tell him. But it's okay if there's holes in your resume. You had a part-time job, you didn't, you devoted time to school, and you worked. People are just curious as to what you've done for other things. So show a variety of interests in your resume. You want to have your resume be as many things as possible that someone will say, I want to talk to this person. I think this person would be interesting. So it's not just bragging about what you've done. Think about how someone else would look at your resume. What I always tell kids to do is, send a resume with an email to if you're just kind of cold calling and calling people that you don't even know, send it in, follow up with a telephone call, ask them, did you get my resume? Now, be ready for rejection. They're probably going to say, yeah, I got 100 resumes. I didn't do anything with it. We got no openings. But try and get someone who will let you in. Say, I'd love to come in and talk to you. I'd love to, as I mentioned before, you're not trying to get a job, you're trying to get an interview. Use your resume to get that interview. So send it out, follow up with a call. It doesn't have to be, if you know somebody at the company, if your mother's sister works there, have her get it to the human resource department or the actuarial department. If you have alumni from the school that are working in a company, you'll be surprised how hard they might work to help you along. People like to help other people. But keep your resume be fairly simple, fairly believable. Make sure it's written in good English, unless you're writing a tie, then write it in good tie. If you're that it's kind of neatly organized, that you don't have one job that you wrote like 3 paragraphs on and another job that you just have a line about. Think about things you've done that are interesting. If you've tutored somebody at school, if you've worked in the library, if you did something, people are interested in what you did, and include that in your resume.
I would like to add some tip in the resume because I also added something interesting in the resume. Like when I was a university college undergraduate, I worked for the student mentor program. So I put it in the resume, and the interviewer asked me about how did I do that. It's very interesting to add some outside professional into the resume, because it will show you that you don't always do something. You don't always focus on the only work. You have the other job that it can apply to your current work. So yeah.
So I'd like to quickly discuss some of the resources that the SOA offers for candidates and students. One we've already discussed a few times, but that is the sample exams that are on the SOA website for PNFM. You can take these exams in a timed environment, which can be a big help in studying, particularly for your first or second exam. We also have the SOA Explorer map. This is a great tool on our website that you can use to locate actuaries in your area, and then there are also people, if they have given their permission, their contact information can be shared as well. This is a great way to connect with someone in your area to potentially find a mentor. And you can access this if you go to the SOA website and go into your SOA account. If you've already taken an exam with us, you already have an SOA account. So all you need to do is go in there and access this, and it can be a very helpful tool when you're studying for exams. We also have, has anyone signed up for the SOA Candidate Connect newsletter? Well, then I very much encourage you to. If you go to our website, the address is there at the bottom. It is very simple. It's soa.org/candidateconnect. This is a newsletter that goes out and can be very helpful and provide very useful information. And it's free, so I very much encourage everyone to sign up for that as well. And now I know it can be hard to ask questions in front of a large group, but we do have about 15 minutes left, and we have 2 very experienced people up here. So if anyone has any questions, you could raise your hand. And anyone have a question for Mr. Brown and Department? That's a good question, Mr. Brown.
Do the Society of Actuaries, they provide exam exemptions for Actuary Institute in Australia?
The short answer to that question is no. The longer answer is no. The SOA takes great pride in its credentials, and the most valuable thing to me besides my reputation is the fact that I'm a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. That means a lot. That gets me into the door of any insurance company, and we're just very concerned if we start. For example, if we accredited this, and I know IFOA just did, if we accredited this school, we can look over your program today and say, yeah, they have pretty strict standards, they're good at it, but then, 2 years later, the professor moves on, they start giving, well, if you didn't do well in the tests, you can get extra credit by taking another question. We just can't control our schools, so we do not give that exemption. We have, as Jeremy showed earlier, we have an awful lot of candidates in Canada, and Canada has a program where you can become a fellow of the Canadian Institute through an exam waiver process. But currently all FCIAs are also FSAs for the most part. But now, and very few of them are taking that waiver program because employers want to know, did you take the SOA exam? Did you pass the SOA exam? If you can do that, if you can pass our exams, you can do the work I'm going to give you as the head of the actuarial department. So no, we don't have exemptions. I'm sure when I was in your shoes, I wish we did, but now that I'm in my shoes, I'm really glad we don't, because we really can, it's a very high standard that we hold our credentials to. Waiver for IFOA. I know I know I got the little thing here. I know the IFOA will waive, I think, as many as 4 exams. The question that the risk you have is, will an employer look at you the same way they'll look at someone who's passed the SOA exams? I know if I've got, like I said, I get hundreds of resumes every week. I get hundreds of kids I can see. Which one am I going to take? Am I going to take? Do I know what? If I were in Canada, where there's both, if I were an employer, I would ask. And you will not, if you go to the waiver group in Canada, you won't be an ASA. And if you're an associate of the Canadian Institute of Actuary, but not an associate of the SOA or not an associate of the CAS, I know how you became that. You went through waiver because everyone else has fellowship from one of the other organizations, or associateship. So you do in fact know.
Because our university, they provide a program where we can go to 13 university and we will be accepted for some IFOA credentials. And so I think that we can waive them to the SOA, and then I take some of the exams myself, and then I can achieve associate faster than others. Is that possible? Is that possible even now?
For you to
For me to waive my credentials from IFOA to SOA, because IFOA don't accept anything anymore right now.
Yeah, we do have an agreement with the IFOA that if you've passed IFOA exams, you can get credit for SOA exams. And we've had that program for a long, long time. But for us to give you credit, you actually have to have taken the exam. You can't get university credit and then transfer over to SOA. Is that clear? Yeah.
Do you have any other questions? So I'll just give one more opportunity. Does anyone have any questions for our panel?
Let me just give you a few other just observations. Having worked in this business a really, really long time, those of you that are pursuing an actuarial career, I think you'll find it very rewarding. And I didn't mean to say anything bad about the IFOA. The IFOA is a highly respected organization. The SOA is a highly respected organization. There are a number of actuarial associations that are highly respected. So I didn't mean to cast any aspersions on IFOA. But I will tell you that it is just a fantastic career. It's very good work. It's financially rewarding. You do interesting work all the time. I will tell you that over the course of my career, I started doing some group pension work, and then without really even noticing it, all of a sudden I was doing some health work and some some pension work, and I was doing some individual life insurance work, and did some property casualty work. So it's always a different work environment. And now 40 years later, none of the work I do relates to the exams I took. The work I do relate to what have you learned in the last 5 or 6 years. That's what's current. I wasn't paid well to know the 1959 Tax Act that I had to study in 1977 to passable, because then SOA Part 7. So you gotta keep, once you do get in, you gotta keep current no matter what you do, whether that's reading industry press, doing kind of reading about the business and having an interest in it. If like exploring and learning and all that, that's not your interest, you probably won't be very successful as an actuary. But if you do put a lot into it, you really can be very, very successful. And I know, certainly for new people graduating from university, your number one concern is getting a job. And at different times, that's an easy thing to do. In some economies, that's a very hard thing to do. When the job market is thin, it doesn't mean you won't get a job. You're just going to have to work a little harder to get one. You're going to have to make more phone calls, send your resume out to more people. If you sent your resume out to 25 people and no one's even returned your call, look at your resume. Does it need to be, touched up a little bit? Could you improve on it? Show it to somebody and say, what do you think about this? And if you go on an interview, ask them, were they impressed by your resume? Are there things you should do? You'll find people who want to help you become successful. I'd love to see more people come into the actual profession. When I had time, I would always visit with students, even if I didn't have current career opportunities. They say, maybe now, maybe another time, I'll meet that person in 10 years, and they'll remember they came in and saw me at my company. So if you're thinking about that, you're just planting seeds as you're out going on interviews. So they could pay off in a big way for you.
Parvat, do you have any final comments? No? Okay, thank you. Well, I'd just like to thank everyone for your time today. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'd like to encourage all of you to visit us on social media. If you do have any questions, we have a customer service department. They can be reached at customer service at SOA.org via email. If you have any questions, you can send it there. They will forward it to the appropriate person, so you don't have to be in the dark as you're going through this process. If anything does come up, please do contact us. And we also have a website, SOA.org. Thank you.